Hello and welcome to Whining About Books, where I review a good book with a stiff drink in my hand. My name is Paige Love, and I am a lover of literature, a purveyor of prose, a connoisseur of composition, and an evaluator of exposition. And to sum all of that up, I am someone who really, truly enjoys reading books. Now, today is my Q.R.I.B review. That is quick reviews of the in-between, the books I read in between my long-form book reviews. And I don't want to waste any more time, so grab your books if you have them and grab your drink because I know you got it. And let's whine about books. Welcome to Whining About Books, where I review a good book with a stiff drink in my hand. My drink of the day is a peppermint tea with honey because I am almost in my last month of pregnancy and the heartburn is real. So I needed something to settle my stomach and to soothe my throat. So here we go. Let's give it a taste and see how it fares. Oh, so perfect on a cold day. And I need this cup of tea to fix my whole life. As you guys already know, I did my long form review of the story of Q.R.I.B by J.R.R. Tolkien. I did an in-depth talk of my thoughts and ideas on this book, and if you want to watch it, you can find the link in the description box below. Now, one of the first books that I read this month was A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and it is a Sherlock Holmes book, but the story itself, the book itself, is such a fun read. I feel like as I get older, I enjoy like mysteries and murder mysteries in particular a lot more than I did when I was younger. And as most of you might know, or some of you might know, Sherlock Holmes has this science of deduction and analysis. Now, he explains it as like you see the end result and you take in all the information, and you're able to, if you pay attention enough and know enough about particular things, then you can figure out what happened. And that's, and I think that's what makes reading Sherlock Holmes a lot of fun. Now, the fun that I had with it is I tried to see things the way that Sherlock Holmes may see them. I'm not as knowledgeable in some of the things that he is knowledgeable in, but I feel like it made it fun. Like, would I notice the same things that he noticed? And he has a particular way of doing things, and which makes sense for a murder mystery. You want to keep things mysterious until the end. You don't want to reveal too much. So that's kind of the approach Sherlock Holmes takes, and we can see that because this story is told from the viewpoint of Watson, which is basically his partner. And in the Study in Scarlet, we are introduced to Watson and Sherlock, like how they came to meet, how they came to be partners. This book, it was light, it was fun, it was easy to read. And I feel like that's necessary sometimes with the books I choose. Sometimes the books are heavy, sometimes the books are difficult to understand, which you will see me get to in this video actually. So to have something that is a quick read, a fun read, an easy read, an entertaining read, to me is what kind of breaks up the monotony and breaks up the denseness of some of the stories that I enjoy reading. There is something that stood out to me in this book where Sherlock Holmes kind of explains why, or the process of how he gathers information and why he deems something, some knowledge as unnecessary for his daily life and for the life that he leads. But he goes, you see, I consider that a man's brain originally is like a little empty attic, and you have to stock it with such furniture as you choose. A fool takes in all the lumber of every sort that he comes across, so that the knowledge which might be useful to him gets crowded out, or at best is jumbled up with a lot of other things, so that he has a difficulty in laying his hands upon it. Now, the skillful workman is very careful indeed as to what he takes into his brain attic. He will have nothing but the tools which may help him in doing his work, but of these he has a large assortment, and all in the most perfect order. It is a mistake to think that little room has elastic walls and can distend to any extent. Depend upon it there comes Depend upon it, there comes a time when for every addition of knowledge you forget something that you knew before. It is of the highest importance, therefore, not to have useless facts elbowing out the useful ones. Now, I found that funny because I found it interesting, not exactly funny, but interesting, because for his line of work, it makes a lot of sense. But I think sometimes a useless fact is just something fun to throw out there. It's a conversation starter. It's something that people can ponder upon and think upon, whether it's a deep fact or an opinion, or something that's just light and kind of quizzical, to think about. But I also found it to be fairly true and honest in a way. It's an interesting way to think about the brain and the information that you take in, what's useful and what is useless. And that him saying that kind of stuck with me because there's so much going on in our modern world. We're kind of bombarded with information, and the things that I guess should be important to us on a day-to-day basis can and does sometimes get crowded out by things that I guess don't directly affect us in the short or long term. But I thought that part was interesting, and I kind of just wanted to share that piece with you, kind of give you guys a little hint for those who have not read Sherlock Holmes, any of the Sherlock Holmes, to kind of give you guys a peek into his personality and a peek into his mindset. But all in all, is this a book that I would like recommend? Absolutely. They're short, they're quick, they're easy, they're fun, and yes, I've said that several times talking about Sherlock Holmes, but that's what they are. It's not something that's going to weigh you down, but can actually make your reading journey a little bit lighter and a little bit more fun. Now, the second book that I read is Alexander the Great by Jacob Abbott. And as you guys may have watched from my midpoint musings, is that Jacob Abbott gives credit where credit is due and gives criticism where it is necessary. And for Alexander the Great's life, it both things need to happen. This man was definitely great. Things that he was able to accomplish with the army that he had, it was not anything significant. I believe it was like either 35,000 or 50,000 compared to the Persian army, which is the army that he was setting out to conquer, the land that he was setting out to conquer, the Persian Empire. And yes, he was successful, but everything that happened within that, I mean, his triumphs and his tribulations, the relationship with his father and his mother, and the relationship with King Darius, which is the king of the Persian Empire, the relationship he had with King Darius's wife and children, and King Darius's mom. I mean, it blew my mind, some of the things that he did. He kind of had this way about him where from a young age he was very mature and smart and likable, and that followed him throughout his life until the very end, where he kind of gets full of himself. Not even kind of, he definitely gets full of himself. I mean, he's now king of this large empire. He's got wealth beyond, I guess, anyone's wildest dreams, and he's praised and he's hailed as a hero and a conqueror and a great king. But you also have this other side where people did not like him. They thought he had too much power. Assassination attempts and plots against his life to get him dethroned or to get him killed. And the fact that he had this sort of surety of his plans, this sort of surety of himself, and knowing so intensely of what he wanted to do and what he wanted to accomplish. um he I guess it gave him this confidence, and it gave his army this confidence that made them nearly unbeatable. Now, with all that being said, Alexander definitely had his faults. The man, uh, towards the end of his life, was a partier. He was a drunkard. He um, basically saw himself as this kind of untouchable man. So upon his death, he kind of leaves in his wake these civilizations that just crumble. And for all his conquering, he conquered and then moved on. He didn't look to create stability in the places that he took over. He just kind of took them over. Was like, okay, yeah, you guys keep, I guess, doing what you're doing. But once his influence went away, man, there was destruction and chaos everywhere. There were governments that were basically thrown into disarray because there was no true leadership. He was setting up kingdoms without being a true king. He needed to um, establish like one rule, and not just go, yeah, I conquer this, all right, on to the next. And that's kind of the mindset he had. I mean, great king, great military commander, but I mean, the dude is not without his faults. With all that being said, man, this was fun to read. It's from 19 to 32, died at 33, I believe. For such a small timeline, this man accomplished so much. Now, the last book that I read for this month is To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. And if you saw my midpoint musings, I would like to take back a couple of the things that I said, not everything, because I still stand by the fact that this book was not necessarily my cup of tea. So this book follows a family, the Ramseys, and their friends who stay with them um, through a 10-year period. Now, with that being said, the first part of this, the book is broken up into three parts. The first part is like one day, and then the middle part is kind of an overview of like the next 10 years, and then the last part is also one day in the family's life. And what was frustrating to me is, or what was frustrating to me about reading this book was the fact that I kind of struggled sometimes to figure out who was talking about what, and what this has to do with, one thing or the other. And I think part of that was because I think naturally, as a reader, when you're trying to understand a book, it's easy to kind of try and put yourself in a character's shoes so that you can relate and better understand, or at least that's what I do. And because of the timeline of this book when it was written, there wasn't a lot that I could relate to um, completely. So I got to a point in the book where I was like, okay, I need to remove myself out of this and read the story for what it was, or for what it is. And that made things a little bit better. Now, like I said in my midpoint musings, Virginia Woolf pioneered stream of consciousness writing, which is it's like you're in the head and mind space of the characters. You get to know their emotions. There's not a lot of dialogue, but there is a lot of getting to know the character by what they feel and what they think and how they live. So, for instance, Mrs. Ramsey is one of the characters, and she is the matriarch of the family. Uh, but she is known for her beauty. That is a big, um, like such a heavy reliance in her life. She is known as, a good mom, which is a great thing to be known as. But she also thinks of herself like, this is who I am, pretty and a mom and a wife. And for me, it's like, okay, yeah, and what else? But she doesn't think much more of herself than that. She thinks of others. I mean, her mind is always on other people. But when it comes to like how she views herself um, like in relation to her husband or in relation to men in general, it's like, man, she sees herself as a shut up, be pretty, and sit there type of woman. So like I said, that was a little hard to put myself in those shoes. Yes, I'm a wife. Yes, I'm a mother. I enjoy it so much. I love my husband. He's a great man, but it's hard to only reduce myself down to those things. There's so much about life that I enjoy. There's so much about um, myself that I find uh, worthy of, being acknowledged beyond what I look like and, what type of mother I am. Although I do uh, I do want to be recognized as a great mom and a great wife. There is a lot more that I want to be recognized for as well. Um, and then you have Lily Briscoe, who is a friend of the family who refuses to be seen as just a wife and just a mother. She does not want to be married. She wants to paint. She is an artist, and she takes on this mindset like, even if my painting goes nowhere and does nothing for anyone, it is something that is for me. And Lily is still very critical of herself, where Mrs. Ramsey is very sure of her station in life. Like, she hears her husband, here's her and her children under her, in the sense that she's this nurturer and caretaker and things like that. And Lily Briscoe has this kind of back and forth of admiring and loving Mrs. Ramsey and being frustrated with what she has come to allow. And the third thing that I want to touch on when it comes to this book is the way the men are portrayed. I mean, they're so full of themselves. Mr. Ramsey, so Mrs. Ramsey's husband, just looks for validation everywhere. He is this philosopher, and he's like, women can't do this, women can't do that. They don't think, they don't write, they just sit there and come up with stuff and keep house and blah blah blah. And his friends, the male friends that are staying there with them, kind of take on this same mindset. And it was it was frustrating. It was interesting to read, but it was definitely frustrating to read, because I'm just like, the men in this book are so they have other things to them, don't get me wrong, but because of the way they think, it's so one dimensional that I'm just like, okay, like, let's be done. I'm done hearing their thoughts. It's become repetitive, because that's mostly what they think. I want validation. I want to be recognized for the things that I say and the things that I do. And I don't just want this validation from my bros and my friends around me. I want it from the women that I think so little of. What? It's kind of that. um I don't even know what to call it. It's irony, I guess, is what it is. um and the last thing that I want to say is, because I sometimes struggle to understand this book, I want to point out that if you're reading a book that you don't understand and that you're hoping to enjoy, or that you're hoping to take something away from, don't be too proud or too too scared to look up additional information. I went after I read a few chapters. I went through Spark Notes, so I'd read a few chapters and then I'd go on Spark Notes to make sure that I'm picking up what the author is putting down. And then beyond that, I went and watched a video explaining, kind of quickly explaining the story, and hoping that that explanation and a little bit more in-depth discussion would change my mind about the story. And to be honest, it didn't. Like, I'm glad that I ultimately began to understand where Virginia Woolf was coming from and where this story kind of was heading. That did not change my mind on whether I enjoyed this book or not. I can't even say if I would ever pick up another Virginia Woolf book if they are like this. It was a book where, would I recommend it? No. Why? Because for me, and this is personal, the other people may love it, and that's great. But for me, it was, I just went, okay, thanks for writing this, I guess. I'm glad you got, your feelings and your thoughts and your emotions down, or, your perspective down through the characters in your story. But I could have gone the rest of my life not knowing what was in this book and been okay with it. And I hope that doesn't sound too harsh, but that does not take away from the fact that I'm happy that I got through the book. And yes, there were little bits and little gems that I enjoyed, but overall, I will probably not pick this book up again. And I get to tell people that yes, I've read it for the sake of reading it. And I'm sorry to end my review, my crib review, my quick reviews of In Between on such a negative note, but it's still a joy to be able to read what is considered a great work. It is still a joy to be able to expand my mind, to expand my knowledge of another author, and it just pushes me to kind of, set my boundaries further out and, deepen my knowledge in the world of literature. So I thank you guys for joining me for this video, and I thank you for listening to me whine about books, and I will catch you in the next one.